It started with a scratch. Just a scratch on the back left fender of my Honda Accord. Now, I'm not a car guy. I don't polish chrome or talk about torque over beers. But I know every inch of that Honda like the veins on the back of my hands. Bought it brand new when I turned 40, paid in full after 2 decades working the loading dock. She wasn't fancy, but she was mine. Slate gray, clean lines, never gave me trouble. Reliable. Unlike my wife. But I didn't know that yet. That morning was like every other. The coffee sputtered from the machine, bitter and watery. The eggs didn't flip right. Michelle sat at the kitchen table, scrolling on her phone, not talking. Nothing unusual there either. She didn't kiss me goodbye. Also not unusual. The scratch revealed itself around 5:30 p.m., bathed in that golden light that makes everything look more expensive than it really is. I was walking up the driveway after a double shift when something glinted wrong. A sliver of metal glared at me from just above the tire. A rough gouge, maybe 6 inches long, fresh enough that the paint still flaked when I touched it. I frowned. I hadn't parked near anyone. I knew that much. I always backed into the same corner at work, between the fence and the power box. Nobody ever parked next to me. Michelle didn't drive the Accord. She hated it. Said it smelled like plastic and old gym clothes. She had her own car, a newer model Civic with fancy heated seats and a moonroof. The Accord was mine, and she had no reason to touch it. But that scratch didn't put itself there. I asked her about it that night. Casually, just like a guy making small talk. She shrugged without looking up from her wine glass. I haven't touched your car. Her tone said the conversation was over. I let it be. But the next morning, something was off. The car was parked 2 feet closer to the mailbox, like it had been moved and clumsily replaced. I knew exactly how the car sat in the driveway. That's the thing about habits, they're like time stamps. I always left a gap wide enough for the garbage bins. Now the bins barely fit. So I checked the mileage. 3 miles higher than yesterday. I'm not a suspicious man. Not by nature. But this didn't sit right. My wife hated my car. She wouldn't borrow it to go around the block. And I damn sure hadn't driven 3 miles in my sleep. The next night, same thing. Another 4 miles. Still no explanation. I started leaving the key in the same spot on the hallway table, angling it just slightly. A trick I remembered from a buddy who suspected his teenage son of sneaking his truck out at night. Every morning, the angle was different. Michelle still denied everything. I stopped asking. Instead, I waited. That Saturday, I told her I was working overtime. She nodded, barely listening. Didn't ask questions. I left at 7 a.m., drove around the block, and parked in the neighbor's driveway. Old Mrs. Dunleavy had moved to Arizona months ago, and her place sat empty. I killed the engine and waited behind the wheel, sipping gas station coffee until it went cold. At 9:12, the front door opened. Michelle stepped out, in jeans and a t-shirt I'd never seen before. One of those clingy kinds that don't leave much to the imagination. She walked straight to my car, glanced up and down the street, and got in. No hesitation. The Accord pulled out of the driveway like she'd done it 100 times. I followed at a distance. She drove across town, past the grocery store, past the gas station we both used, past all the places that made sense. She didn't stop until she hit a small strip of rundown warehouses near the old rail yard. Then she turned into a gravel lot behind one of them and disappeared. I parked a block away and waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Finally, I got out and walked. There was only one car in that lot besides mine, an older black Lexus. Clean. Too clean. I peered through the Accord's window as I passed. Her purse was gone. So were her sunglasses. But the gear stick was still warm. I kept walking until I saw a side door cracked open. And I heard them. Not words, just sounds. Low and rhythmic and unmistakably human. I didn't look inside. I didn't have to. I turned around, walked back to the car, and sat behind the wheel. I didn't cry. Didn't shake. Just stared straight ahead. Something settled inside me then. Not grief, not even anger. Something colder. Heavier. Like a stone dropped in water that doesn't make a ripple. I didn't drive home. I drove to a hardware store 20 minutes away where nobody knew my face. And I bought 4 items. A small can of metallic spray paint. A ceramic blade. A bottle of industrial epoxy. And a new steering wheel cover. The man at the register didn't ask questions. Just scanned the items, slid them into a plastic bag and said, "Have a good one." I nodded. Said nothing. The epoxy was the kind used on engine blocks, thick as tar and impossible to remove once cured. I'd done my research before leaving the house that morning. Quietly. On my old tablet. Nothing traceable to my phone, nothing linked to hers. Just a simple search for something that would turn from liquid to solid in under 10 minutes and never come off without power tools. At home, I waited until she was asleep. Michelle had a habit of passing out with a podcast in her ears, the kind where women talk about murder in soft, soothing voices. She called them her bedtime stories. Ironic, looking back. At 11:43 p.m., I took the keys from the hallway table and walked outside. The Accord was still in its usual spot. I pulled it into the garage and shut the door behind me slowly, quietly, one panel at a time. Under the flickering garage light, I went to work. First, the steering wheel. I mixed the epoxy and spread a thin layer over the inside curve, right where her hands would go. Not enough to be noticed by sight or touch, but enough that, when the air turned warm and the wheel heated in the sun, it would bind like glue to skin. I fitted the new cover over it, sealed it shut, and stepped back. Then came the paint. The scratch on the fender still bugged me. Not the damage itself, but what it represented. Someone had leaned into that car in a hurry. Or maybe thrown her against it. Either way, it wasn't innocent. I didn't need a picture. The evidence was metal deep. So I covered it. The paint didn't quite match. Not at first. Too shiny. Too new. But with a little dust and some fine grit sanding, it looked like it had always been there. I finished around 2 a.m., wiped everything clean, and pushed the car back to its place. Michelle didn't stir. The next morning, she barely looked at me. Just shuffled around the kitchen like every other day, making toast she wouldn't eat and pretending to laugh at her phone. She was always smiling now, but never at me. At 9:05, she left. With my keys. Just like before. I waited 10 minutes, then followed in the Civic. She didn't change her routine. Same route. Same warehouse. Same lot. Same man's car already there, tucked in the shadows, like a secret too big to hide in daylight. But this time, I didn't stop down the street. I parked right across from the Accord and waited with the windows cracked. An hour passed. Then 90 minutes. Finally, I saw her. Michelle stepped out, hair messy, cheeks flushed, grinning like a teenager. I could see her better now. Saw how she smoothed her shirt, ran her fingers through her hair, checked her lipstick in the rearview mirror. She looked happy. Not a tired kind of happy. Radiant. She pulled open the driver's side door and gripped the steering wheel. It only took 4 seconds. Her scream was so loud it echoed off the metal siding. She yanked her hands back, or tried to. But the glue had set. Solid. Flesh to rubber. She thrashed in her seat, kicked the floorboard, howled like a wounded animal. But the more she struggled, the deeper her skin tore. Thin threads of blood ran down her wrists and pooled on the seat. I watched it all. She was stuck for nearly 5 minutes before she realized she couldn't get out without help. She didn't call me. She called him. He appeared from the warehouse looking confused, shirt half-buttoned, keys still in his hand. But when he saw her, saw the blood, the tears, the look of rage, he ran to the door and tried to pry her loose. He managed to free one hand, but the other was ruined, torn open down to the knuckle. Red smears streaked across the dashboard like finger paint in a preschooler's tantrum. They both looked around nervously. That's when I drove away. Not fast. Not with satisfaction. Just done. Back home, I cleaned the garage again. Threw out the gloves, the brush, the leftover epoxy. Poured bleach on the floor even though there was nothing to clean. It just felt necessary. Michelle got home 3 hours later. She didn't say a word. She didn't cry. She just went straight to the bathroom and locked the door. The sound of running water didn't stop for almost 40 minutes. When she came out, both her hands were bandaged. Still no words. That night, she slept facing the wall. And the next morning, she took the Civic. She didn't touch the Accord after that. It sat in the driveway like a corpse no one dared move, the blood on its interior now replaced with silence. I washed it the next day. Thoroughly. Not because I wanted to keep it clean, but because I knew she'd see me do it. I wanted her to see me wipe her off it. She watched from the kitchen window. I didn't look back. After that, something changed between us. She didn't ask me how my day was. Didn't fake smiles. Didn't pretend. We coexisted like two ghosts in a house built for people who used to love each other. The silence didn't hurt anymore. It just fit. But I wasn't done. See, the steering wheel wasn't revenge. Not really. It was a message. The real revenge had to be quieter. Slower. Something that worked over time, not in an instant. She needed to feel it. The weight of deception turned inward. That was the key. Let her see it every day in the corners of her life, never knowing where it came from or when it would stop. I started small. I changed the settings on her car stereo. She liked upbeat pop, mindless, forgettable. I set it to the AM station that played nothing but static and evangelical rants about damnation. I adjusted the seat just enough to make it uncomfortable, the kind of difference you can't prove, but you feel in your bones. I turned the AC vent slightly toward her eyes and loosened the rearview mirror. Every morning, she'd fix what I broke. And every night, I'd undo it. Not enough to trigger confrontation. Just enough to wear her down. After a week, she stopped driving the Civic altogether and started taking Ubers to work. That's when I really got started. I found the warehouse. It wasn't hard. Just a shell company on the edge of town registered to a generic name. Storage, probably. Or a place to disappear for a while. I watched it for 2 days. No one came or left after Michelle's visits. Just her and the Lexus guy. I started calling him Lyle in my head. He looked like a Lyle. Expensive shoes, thinning hair he tried to hide with sunglasses and arrogance. I didn't follow him. I followed her. One Wednesday, I watched her sit in her car outside the warehouse for a full hour before going inside. Just sitting. Not crying. Not texting. Just staring at the wheel. She hadn't forgotten. Good. That night, I placed a small envelope under her pillow. Inside, a printed photo. Grainy, black and white, taken from a cheap camera. It showed her car parked beside his. Nothing incriminating. Just enough. She didn't say a word about it. But the next morning, her pillow was gone. She slept without one after that. I waited 2 more days and sent another envelope. This one was hand-delivered to her at work. Inside, a single rubber glove, sealed in a Ziploc. No note. No explanation. Just the kind of thing that sits in the back of your head like a spider on the ceiling. She came home late that night. Didn't speak. Her bandaged hand had healed into something else. Raw skin, scarred pink, half covered by fingerless gloves. She wore them constantly now, even inside. I don't think it was about the pain anymore. I think she just didn't want to see what she'd become. The third envelope came a week later. This time, taped to the inside of her car windshield. Just a key. A copy of the one she used to take from the hallway table. She didn't ask where I got it. She just started locking her bedroom door at night. Still, no words between us. Not one. But the message had been received. I could see it in how she moved, slower, more careful, like every object might explode if she touched it wrong. Her face lost its shine. Her hair went up in a bun every day. Makeup disappeared. The phone spent more time face down. Lyle stopped coming to the warehouse. I checked. I watched. Eventually, Michelle stopped going too. But that didn't mean she came back to me. Oh no! That door had already shut. Now we were just two strangers, haunted by a ghost we'd both helped bury. And I was still digging. By the start of the next month, the warehouse was boarded up. I don't know who did it. Maybe Lyle, maybe someone else who didn't want loose ends blowing in the wind. But one day, the gravel lot was empty, and the next, plywood covered the door where Michelle used to disappear. A for lease sign hung crooked from the chain-link fence. She saw it too. I watched from the corner as she pulled up, looked, and didn't even get out of the car. Just sat there for a moment like someone mourning a grave with no name on it. Then she drove away. She didn't cry. Not visibly. But there was something gone in her face after that. Something she tried to keep alive. And I wasn't finished yet. The next part required precision. I waited until she left her purse unattended one night in the kitchen while she was doing laundry. Quiet as smoke, I took a photo of her driver's license, credit card, and insurance papers. I didn't steal anything. I didn't have to. 2 days later, I submitted a change of address on her behalf. Not through the post office. That'd leave a trail. No, this was cleaner. Online DMV portal. I created a new forwarding address linked to a P.O. box across town under a fake name. Set up email notifications. Registered her car under a different zip code. It took 15 minutes. 3 days later, her registration tags went missing. I peeled them off myself, slow and steady in the garage one night, while she slept with the bedroom door locked. Left just enough adhesive behind to make it look like a theft, not vandalism. She didn't notice until she was pulled over on her way to work. She told me later that she got a $200 fine and a warning for failing to update her address. I nodded. Offered her no reaction. She blamed the system. I knew better. A week later, I dropped an anonymous complaint to the HOA about her car being parked in the wrong direction on the street. She liked to nose in so she could leave quickly. They sent her a formal letter. She stopped parking in front of the house after that. Started hiding it a block away, like it was something to be ashamed of. Good. She should be. Then came the anonymous package. I left it at the front door myself, in a plain brown envelope, just after dusk. Inside, a printed DMV suspension notice, fake, but realistic. I'd copied the letterhead, the spacing, the formatting, even used the right watermark. Said her license was under review due to suspected misuse. Said a hearing would be scheduled. Gave her a bogus case number. The next morning, I found her on the edge of the bed staring at it like it was a death sentence. She didn't tell me. But she stopped driving altogether. started taking the bus to work. The woman who used to sneer at public transit now sat shoulder to shoulder with strangers and clutched her bag like a tourist in a bad part of town. Lyle never showed up again. Not once. I checked the Lexus's plate, ran it through a friend at a tire shop who owed me a favor. It didn't trace back to our county. Not even our state. Probably rented. Probably fake. It didn't matter anymore. Michelle didn't talk about him. She barely talked at all. Dinner became a ritual of clinks and silence. She still cooked, more out of habit than affection, but we ate like prisoners at opposite ends of the same cell. One night, she left the TV on in the living room and went upstairs. A documentary was playing, about identity theft. I think she watched the first 10 minutes. I think she saw enough to wonder. And I made sure she kept wondering. The next day, her phone glitched. Just once. Long enough for the screen to freeze and reboot while she was on a call. Nothing major. But I'd installed a simple script. Nothing malicious. Just a loop that made the phone stutter randomly. Every time it happened, it felt like paranoia. She reset the phone 3 times that week. She changed her Apple ID. Bought a new charger. Still happened. I watched her start to flinch every time the screen dimmed. She started keeping her phone face down again. I knew the signs. The mistrust she once weaponized against me had become her only company. And it whispered louder than I ever could. At night, I heard her get up. Pacing. Walking between rooms, like something in her skin wouldn't let her rest. The sound of drawers opening, closets closing, things shifting. She was checking for something. She didn't even know what. By October, she stopped wearing her wedding ring. She didn't hide it, didn't even make a scene. One morning it was there beside her toothbrush in a chipped ceramic dish, and the next, it wasn't. I noticed the tan line before I noticed the absence. Her eyes had sunken. Not from crying. Michelle wasn't the crying kind, but from weight. Not physical, not quite emotional either. It was the kind of weight you carry when you don't know where the trap is, but you're sure it's already sprung. And still, I said nothing. I didn't need to. Her world was already shrinking. The next part required patience. I knew she'd try to claw some sense of control back. People like her always do. Guilt makes them restless, hungry for balance. But there's no manual for this kind of silence. No apology long enough to rewind time. She was trapped in the present, and so I made the present unfamiliar. I started with the fridge. Every Sunday, I rotated things, moved the milk behind the orange juice, flipped the labels on the jars, took 2 eggs from the carton and hid them behind the baking soda. Then I'd act like I hadn't noticed when she fumbled around, blaming herself. She started writing lists, taping notes to herself on the inside of the fridge. Little reminders like, "Check the butter tray," or, "You bought this Tuesday." But the notes didn't help, because I changed those too. Turned butter tray into battery tray. Changed Tuesday into Thursday. Nothing bold enough to be obvious. Just enough to make her question whether she was tired or losing her grip. Then came the calendar. Michelle kept a planner on the kitchen counter, always had. Color-coded tabs. Neat handwriting. Bills due, work shifts, appointments. I took a pencil and lightly erased 1 item each week. Replaced it with something similar, but wrong. A doctor's visit became a dentist appointment. Her manager's name shifted by 1 letter. Small changes. Enough to cause awkward conversations, missed reminders, confused looks from people who thought she had it together. I watched her spiral from across the table. The woman who once corrected me over the smallest details now checked her planner twice before speaking. I almost felt bad. Almost. But then, I remembered the way she grinned getting into my car that morning. The car she said she hated. The seat I had adjusted just for me, still warm from her betrayal, and the sympathy dried up. Around Halloween, I disconnected the cable. Not all of it, just her shows. I rewired the downstairs box so that her favorite channels gave static. Left the others intact. I claimed the weather knocked something loose. She spent 3 hours on hold with the provider. They reset everything. Didn't fix it. That night, she sat on the couch, remote in hand, and stared at the blue screen like she was waiting for someone to speak. I never changed it back. She stopped watching TV after that. Started going to bed early. Earlier than ever. By November, I noticed something new. She was wearing perfume again. Not much. Subtle. Something floral. Not for me. I knew that instantly. But she was trying to feel something again. Trying to wake up whatever part of herself she'd buried under fear and silence. She even started dressing better. Button-ups instead of sweatshirts. Jeans with real stitching. Light makeup. And that told me she was looking for someone. Which meant it was time to make her visible. But not the way she wanted. I waited until she left the house. Then I found her old laptop, tucked under the bed, still logged in. She hadn't used it in months. Her email was open. In less than 10 minutes, I posted a Craigslist ad under her name. Just vague enough to be plausible. Mature woman seeking discreet conversation. Please be kind. No games. Listed her initials. No photo. No direct number. Just a temporary inbox I set up with her full name and zip code. The messages poured in by the dozens. Men of all kinds. Photos, offers, threats, promises. Some pathetic. Some disturbing. I let them sit. I never replied. Just let the inbox fill up. Then one day, I left the laptop open on the kitchen table with the ad window minimized, but not closed. She found it while I was at work. I know because when I came home, the laptop was gone. So was her phone. So was she. She didn't come back that night. I didn't worry. I knew exactly where she'd gone. Hair disheveled. Eyes bloodshot. No purse. No explanation. She walked into the house like it was foreign territory, like a guest who wasn't sure if she was welcome. She didn't speak, didn't look at me. Just went straight upstairs slowly, her feet dragging the carpet like anchors. I heard her throw up 20 minutes later. It wasn't food poisoning. It was shame. Whatever she thought she was chasing out there, some man, some rescue fantasy, it hadn't saved her. Maybe it had humiliated her. Maybe it had scared her. But it hadn't fixed the pit she dug herself into. And I made sure the walls of that pit stayed smooth. No handholds. No ladders. Over the next few days, she moved like she was underwater. Quiet. Slow. Always watching her reflection in mirrors a little too long, like she was waiting for it to say something back. She wore long sleeves again, even indoors. She scrubbed the bathroom twice. Changed the sheets in the guest room even though no one had stayed there. One night, I found her sitting in the laundry room in the dark. Not doing laundry. Just sitting. I turned the light on, and she squinted like she hadn't seen brightness in years. I didn't ask why she was there. She didn't explain. She just got up and walked past me, saying nothing. It was time for the final turn. I waited for a cold morning. One where the frost glazed the windshield, and the engine didn't like to start. Michelle took the Civic again, like she always did now. I followed at a distance. She went to work. Same route. Same lot. She still worked the front desk at the physical therapy clinic. Still smiled for strangers. But it didn't reach her eyes anymore. She used to have that effortless cheer, like nothing in the world could touch her. Now she touched every surface like it might bite. While she was inside, I parked nearby, walked to her car, and carefully opened the front passenger door. She never locked it anymore. Too distracted. From under my jacket, I took out the final tool in my kit, a small can of compressed air and a tiny strip of plastic. The Civic had airbags on both sides, standard for newer models. Easy to manipulate if you knew what to look for. I didn't disable them. That would have been cliché. I did something subtler. I inserted the plastic into the seam just beneath the airbag housing on the passenger side, and used the air to dislodge the bracket just enough that the casing would bulge when deployed, creating more force than expected. Not lethal. Not dangerous. Just shocking. Then I resealed it. No one would notice unless they tore the car apart. That night, I left a brochure in her glove box. One of those roadside emergency kits. A tire gauge, a thermal blanket, a seatbelt cutter. On the front, prepare for the unexpected. She didn't ask where it came from. Didn't ask anything at all. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then came the accident. It wasn't serious. A fender bender near the light on Whitmore Avenue. Some guy in a truck clipped her rear bumper when he ran a red. She slammed on the brakes, and the car jolted to a stop. That's when the airbag blew. I wasn't there, but I saw the photos later. She sent one to her insurance. The passenger airbag had exploded sideways, cracking the dashboard and showering the seat with dust. Not standard behavior. Not by the book. The adjuster told her it was a deployment irregularity. Said they'd look into it. Said it was rare. But Michelle didn't care about the money. She cared about the message. Because wedged between the cracks of the dashboard, caught in the plastic seam like it had always been there, was a single playing card. A Queen of Hearts. Bent. Smeared. Burnt along one edge. It was the card I'd found months ago, wedged under the seat of my Accord. I hadn't known what it meant then. But she did. She stared at it for hours that night, twisting it between her fingers like it might confess something. She didn't ask me where it came from. She knew. And she was terrified. Good. Winter came fast that year. The leaves skipped fall altogether, green to gone in a matter of days. The wind turned sharp. The sky hung low. Michelle stopped going outside unless she had to. No more trips. No more visitors. No calls. Her phone sat silent for days at a time. The perfume disappeared. So did the makeup. She didn't wear the gloves anymore. Her hands had healed, but the scars were permanent, thin pink streaks across her palm where the epoxy had held on too long. I watched her stare at them sometimes when she thought I wasn't looking. Her version of a crucifix. The Queen of Hearts stayed on her nightstand. She never asked how it got there. Or why. But she started sleeping with the light on. I took no satisfaction in it. Only closure. Because that was the last piece. That's what I'd waited for. Not screams or confessions. Not tears or forgiveness. Just that quiet, sunken dread. That understanding that something had been taken from her and wouldn't be returned. Her sense of safety. Of control. Of being the one who could hurt and walk away. Now she knew what it felt like to be caught inside the slow grind of doubt. To lose faith in every object, every corner, every familiar thing. To wonder each morning what's next. And the beauty of it was, there was nothing next. I didn't need to keep going. The trap didn't need more bait once the animal was trained to flinch at its own shadow. So I let the silence stay. We shared the house like roommates with a secret murder between them. She cleaned less. I mowed more. No one mentioned birthdays. No one planned for spring. The rooms lost their warmth. Photos disappeared from walls. Her laughter never came back. One day in January, she asked if I wanted her to leave. Just that. Soft. Hesitant. I shook my head. No, I said. She waited, as if expecting more. I said nothing, and that silence, my one-word mercy, became her prison. She didn't ask again. Some nights I'd hear her crying in the shower, barely audible under the water. Not sobs, not begging, just slow, exhausted weeping, like someone who finally understood the weight of a world they helped break. Let it be known, I never laid a hand on her. I never screamed, never threatened, never made a single move that couldn't be passed off as an accident or misunderstanding. Because revenge doesn't need noise. It just needs time, pressure, and the willingness to be patient while someone drowns in the quiet you leave behind. I still drive the Accord. It runs fine. New fender. Clean seats. No blood, no scratches. Smells like air freshener and faint regret. She doesn't look at it anymore when she passes by. Doesn't even seem to recognize it. Good. It's better that way. The house still stands. The calendar still flips. Dinners are still cooked and left half-eaten. From the outside, we look like any old married couple who let life wear them thin. But behind closed doors, there's a silence that hums louder than thunder. And every time she puts her hand on a doorknob, turns a faucet, or pulls into a parking spot, she wonders if it's the day I start again. But I won't, because the paint's dry now, and she knows it'll never come off.